Okay, good morning, Bangkok, or good afternoon, rather. I want to start with two questions. First one is this. Can you guess what's going on here? Well, I'll get to the answer in a minute. The next question is this. Is the internet valuable to us? Now, it's not a trick question. Of course, it is valuable. But would you believe that there are countries where the internet is actually not useful? There are quite a few in the world, and one of them is DPRK, better known as North Korea. So in North Korea, the government blocks all access to internet in order to limit the flow of information from outside the country. So the ordinary citizens are instead provided with their own version of internet called 광명. It's sort of like it's a private, closed network with the contents tightly controlled by the government. And this picture I've shown you earlier is exactly what's going on in North Korea, in one of the largest libraries in Pyongyang. The regular folks are going there to access the 광명, their version of the internet, and in order to see contents like this. So sometimes it can be something as innocent as learning how to play a game of Go, but mostly it's propaganda. So why am I talking about this? Well, I'm talking about this because technology is a tool, but the tool is not going to be useful unless the society values what you can do with it. So in North Korea, you can say that internet is not valuable because the society doesn't value freedom of information or freedom of speech. So you can say that in North Korea, internet does not have good product market fit. Similarly, I think blockchain technology can have a good product market fit in certain places, and I think Southeast Asia is one of them. And I'm going to show you why that's the case in the next 15 minutes, but without mentioning X infinity. So, okay, to talk about product market fit, obviously you have to talk about product and the market, but I want to do this in reverse order. I want to talk about market first, which in this case is Southeast Asia, and then the product, which in this case is a blockchain, and see if there's a fit between the two. Yeah, sorry. Actually, I wanted to just tell you a little bit about myself before that. So my name is Chung, and I run Presto Research, which is a research unit within Presto. Presto is a Singapore-based quantitative trading firm established in 2014 with a trading volume exceeding $500 billion annually. Yeah, and the usual disclaimer, nothing what I say is a financial advice. Okay, so about the market or Southeast Asia. Now, if you zoom out and look around the world, apart from the high-income OECD countries, there's a the people around the world don't have bank accounts. More than half the population usually don't have the privilege of a bank account. And if you narrow it down to Southeast Asia, it's not that much better, with the exception of Singapore, Malaysia, and Thailand. Unbanked population quite high. But because of a large population and because young demographics and also high the cell phone penetration, there's a potential for new solutions for better financial inclusion. But this is actually not something new. I think the broader fintech community has been talking about this for years. What I want to add to this narrative is that solutions for better financial inclusion can be either centralized one or decentralized one, or a combination of both. And I like to argue that in the case of Southeast Asia, actually there's a good case for applying decentralized solution. And I think I can offer you many reasons, but the best one that I think I can offer is the fact that the people in Southeast Asia has done much better job working with each other as a community in many different areas. And this comes from my own experience of dealing with people in this part of the world. But one evidence that I can offer you for this presentation is ASEAN. So what is ASEAN? ASEAN is a trade bloc. It's a trade bloc, but it's actually the only functioning trade bloc in Asia. You don't see this in many other parts of Asia at the moment. And ASEAN is, the trade bloc is actually, when you think about it, it's a collective to promote free trade amongst its member states by removing trade barriers. In crypto speak, this would be a community that aims for frictionless value exchange. So kind of sounds like a blockchain. And the best known example is, you can look around the world and this is the world population. Obviously China, India, the most populous countries, so they stand out. But EU is the European Union is the best known example of a trade bloc. So it was established in 1993 with the 27 member states. The next one that's well known is in the US, in the North America, called the USMCA. It was previously known as NAFTA. It was established in 1994 with the 3 member states. And what do we have in Asia? Well, when people talk about Asian economies, people often talk about in terms of China or Japan because they are the 2 largest economies in Asia. So that oftentimes overshadows the fact that there's a thriving trade bloc in this part of the world, and that's ASEAN. And this ASEAN was, covers, it's not small, it covers 600 million people, 10 member states, and it was formed in 1968. So it's older than EU or USMCA. So these are the list of the benefits that the member states enjoy from ASEAN. And it's a long list, so I'm not going to go through all of it, but there are various the benefits to in terms of freer exchange of labor or freer flow of capital, so on and so forth. And ASEAN, I know just like any other international organizations, they have their own share of criticism sometimes, but I think it's hard to deny the fact that it's done a lot of good for the member states in Southeast Asia. And they are trying to build on top of their success by expanding their network to include their northern neighbors. So in 2011, ASEAN proposed a wider pan-Asian trade bloc to include countries in other parts of Asia. And in 2020, it went into effect. So it's fairly young organization. That's why nobody's ever heard of it. But if it becomes successful, it'll be the largest trading bloc in the world. So that's the market. Now on to the product. So in this section, I'm going to talk about what blockchain is, because that's the product that we're talking about here, and what the value proposition of the blockchain is. And I think for some of you, this could be boring because if you've been in the industry for some time, you've heard this many times. But I think there is a value in revisiting it and reminding ourselves, because I think in this industry, there's just too much distraction and it's easy to lose sight of it. So in the most simplest form, I'd say the value proposition of a blockchain is frictionless value exchange. So before the arrival of Bitcoin, if you wanted to engage in value exchange in a digital space, you needed the intermediaries, because technology before that was based on information exchange. So you need somebody in the middle to keep track of the value transfer. With the arrival of Bitcoin, basically the technology enabled the value to be exchanged without having somebody centralized keeping the ledger. And another way of looking at it is like this. So before the early 90s, before the arrival of internet, this is what the world looked like. So if you wanted to do information exchange or value exchange or code execution, you had to rely on centralized network. So if you wanted to exchange information, you had to go to telecom operators like AT&T or AIS if it's in Thailand, or China Mobile if it's in China. If you wanted to exchange value, you had to rely on banking network or stock exchanges if you wanted to trade stocks. If you're a developer and wanted to build a software, you had to rely on the centralized operating system like MS-DOS or Mac OS, so forth. Now, when the internet came along in the mid-90s, which is the original decentralized network, now you had this infrastructure where you can exchange information without having to rely on centralized entities. So that was a big breakthrough. But then when the Bitcoin came along, this decentralized network, its functionality has expanded to include value exchange. And when the Ethereum came along, the functionality expanded even further to include code execution. So that now that the developers can build something on top of Ethereum, and which is decentralized operating system basically, then what you have is decentralized software service. Another way of looking at it is this way: the blockchain and internet, they're both networks, as I mentioned. Then also have it's a public goods because anybody can access it, but also have a strong element of community powered by token ownership, which is something that differentiates from the internet. And you may recall that I mentioned that the ASEAN or Southeast Asia is a community, so there's a little bit of overlap here. And then, so these are the value propositions, but does the world really need this? And I would say yes, and there's evidence for it, but we need to answer this in differently for Bitcoin and smart contract platforms like Ethereum. So let's look at Bitcoin first. So Bitcoin is a store of value. Everybody's using it as a store of value, and I think it's hard to deny that after the spot ETF listing in the US. And it's a store of value, but a little bit different from other store of value like stocks or bonds or real estates, because it has a potential to become money someday. So it's going through that store of value stage of the money evolution process. Now with the Ethereum or other types of smart contract platforms, the main thing is that somebody needs to come and build something on top of it. So the question is anybody building anything useful on these networks? And the way to kind of assess that is look at where the gas is mostly spent on, or the network fee is mostly spent on these networks. So, for Ethereum, for instance, you can check that by going into websites like Ultrasound Money, and then it'll list all the applications that run on Ethereum in terms of, and they would rank them in terms of who's using the most gas. And the list is it fluctuates. It's very fluid. But no matter when you visit this website, you always see three names on this list, top 10, in the top 10 ranking. That is Uniswap, USDT, and USDC. So these are, you can, I think, safely say that the killer apps of the smart contract platforms that have a real use cases in the real world. And the stablecoin is, it's popular. It's certainly more value than PayPal and Visa. And when you think about why it's so popular, because it's a US dollar, and they tokenize an asset that everybody wants, no matter where you live, and that's US dollars. And it's new form of US dollars, and therefore it benefits from a network effect. Uniswap, or the decentralized exchange, also very similarly, it's a service that benefits from network effect. And when you think about how they put together this service, it relies on people being able to park their assets in a liquidity pool, and you won't be able to build such a huge liquidity pool that people can trade against unless it is on frictionless value exchange rail, which is what Uniswap is built on. So, is there a fit between Southeast Asia and the blockchain? And I would say, yes, there is. I've shown to you that the blockchain's value proposition is frictionless value exchange for its members, for community members. And Southeast Asia gets 2 check marks on that point. First, Southeast Asia is, as I mentioned before, that they get it. They get the importance of frictionless value exchange. They've been working towards that for many years, which is not something that is not very easily seen if you look at other parts of Asia, maybe in other parts of the world. But in Asia, I think they've done very well by forming a community for themselves and engaging in frictionless value exchange, at least try to. And secondly, it's a strong community. And the fact that they've been running an organization like ASEAN so successfully for more than 50 years, I think it speaks to that. And it's important because you can have a successful community without blockchain, but you cannot have a successful blockchain without strong community. And it's not just me saying it. There's some data that supports what I say here. And for instance, Chainalysis, they produce a report every year ranking countries in terms of their crypto adoption. And they actually focus on grassroots adoption. So they have a way of weeding out all the speculation or trading activities and really to kind of hone in on actual use cases. And in the most recent report, which was published in the second half of last year, in the top 10 countries, 4 of them are Southeast Asian countries. So Vietnam, Philippines, Indonesia, and Thailand. And also, the report argues that the countries whose income per head is within a certain range has a faster crypto adoption than others. And that range is something like 1,000 to 4,500 US dollars per head. And you can see here that this orange line is, compared to other income group countries, is the only one that's kind of picking up. The average income per capita in Southeast Asia is around 5,000. So you can say that the Southeast Asian countries is kind of falls at the top end of that range. So in conclusion, technology is a tool, and tool exists to help us realize societal value. A tool that does not align with the societal value is not going to have a chance to realize its full potential, just like the internet in North Korea. So for the same reason that internet is useful in places that value freedom of speech and freedom of information, blockchain is useful in places that value collaboration, open economy, and free trade. And Southeast Asia is that place. Thank you.